I can still smell my grandmother's kitchen, not a specific meal, the kitchen itself. Flour dust, warm butter, and coffee that had been sitting on the back burner since 6 in the morning. Every object in that kitchen had been there for decades. Nothing was new, nothing was trendy, and nothing was there by accident. Today I am walking through 11 things that were always in my grandmother's kitchen. Not because they were cheap, because each one represented something she believed about how a family should be fed. And number 1 is not a kitchen tool at all. It is the thing that made every single one of these objects matter. Stay with me for that one. Number 11, a stovetop percolator that was never put away. It lived on the back burner, a tall, polished aluminum pot with a dark handle and a glass dome on the lid. When it brewed, coffee shot up through the stem and hit that glass dome in a rhythm. You could watch it darken from pale gold to deep mahogany, while the whole house filled with that roasted smell. That percolator was not for her, it was for whoever walked through the door. The mailman, a neighbor, a grandchild who showed up unannounced. There was always enough coffee because she always made a full pot. We replaced it with a machine that makes 1 cup at a time in a disposable plastic pod. Fast, efficient, and completely alone. Number 10, a hand crank flour sifter. A tin cylinder with a wooden knob that you turned in a steady rhythm. It made a soft sound. Children were given the sifting job because of that rhythm. She sifted her flour 3 times before it went into a cake. 3 times. Not because a recipe told her to, because she knew the difference between a dense biscuit and a light one. She did not call it precision. She called it caring about the people she was feeding. We replaced it with pre-sifted flour and boxed cake mixes. We skipped the step that made the cake worth eating. Number 9, a bread box on the counter. A wooden box with a roll-top lid that kept bread fresh for 5 to 7 days without plastic wrap or a twist tie. When the bread finally went stale, it did not go in the trash. It went into breadcrumbs or French toast or bread pudding. The bread box was not storage. It was a complete food management system in a single wooden box. We replaced it with a plastic bag, a twist tie, and a garbage can. Number 8, flour sack towels. Thin cotton squares, soft from 1,000 washings, often embroidered with wildflowers along the bottom hem. Here is what most people do not know. During the Depression, flour came in 50-pound cotton sacks. Women reused the fabric for towels, clothing, and quilts. When the flour companies realized this, they started printing the sacks with pretty patterns to encourage women to buy their brand. By 1942, 3 million women and children in America were wearing clothing made from flour sacks. They did not call it sustainability, they called it making do. Those towels lasted 20 years. We replaced them with paper towels that last 20 seconds. Number 7, an apron. Not a novelty barbecue apron used twice a summer. A full-length cotton apron with deep pockets and long sashes, worn every single day. It was not just clothing protection. It held hot pan handles. It dried her hands. It wiped a child's tears. It carried eggs from the coop. It covered warm biscuits to keep them soft. Putting that apron on was a ritual. It meant somebody in this house is about to take care of this family. We lost the garment, but what we really lost was the ritual. Can I be honest about this next one? This is the item that makes people cry, and I understand why. Number 6, a recipe box filled with handwritten cards. A small wooden box or painted tin with index cards behind worn cardboard tabs. Cakes, pies, preserves, casseroles. The cards were yellowed and stained, vanilla drops, butter rings, flour dust. Some had notes in the margin. Very good. Add more butter. Needs more salt. Her handwriting on that card is the closest thing to having her stand beside you while you cook. We replaced it with Pinterest boards and bookmarked browser tabs, digital recipes that might disappear tomorrow. You cannot hold a URL in your hand. You cannot smell your grandmother's handwriting on a screen. If you are feeling the weight of these memories, you are not alone. A quick subscribe means you will not miss the next one. I am working on a video right now about the things I wish someone had told me before I turned 50. I think it might be the most personal video I have ever made. Number 5, A tea kettle that lived on the stove, not in a cabinet, not plugged into a wall, on the burner, permanently. It hummed softly all day and whistled sharply when it was ready. Hot water was always available. For tea, for a guest, for a hot water bottle on a cold night. That kettle meant the kitchen was never cold and never silent. We replaced it with an electric kettle we unplug and store in a cabinet, faster, quieter, and the kitchen lost its heartbeat. Number 4, a hand crank egg beater. 2 interlocking metal whisks driven by a gear wheel with a red wooden handle. It made a fast whirring sound that children loved. This was often the first kitchen task a child was trusted with. You stood on a chair, you turned the crank while the bowl wobbled. Your grandmother stood behind you with her hand on the bowl. The egg beater was not just a tool, it was an invitation. It said, "You are old enough to help. You are part of this family's work." We replaced it with an electric stand mixer that children are told not to touch. We replaced an invitation with a warning label. Number 3, a cooling rack on the windowsill. A wire grid set on a wide wooden sill with the window cracked open. Hot pies releasing steam into the afternoon breeze. You could smell what was baking from the driveway. Setting a pie on the sill was not just cooling, it was broadcasting to the neighborhood that someone in this house was making something worth eating. We sealed our kitchens from the outside world, and we lost the signature of a home that was alive. Number 2, the canning shelf. Dark, cool pantry shelves lined with rows of mason jars, peaches, pickles, stewed tomatoes, green beans, each jar sealed with a flat lid that made a sharp pop when the vacuum took hold. Walking down to that shelf in January and pulling a jar of summer peaches was like walking through a time machine. You could taste July in the middle of a snowstorm. That shelf was my grandmother's savings account, not money in a bank. Food on a shelf, visible, touchable, and absolutely reliable. We replaced it with a globalized supply chain that delivers fresh berries in January. Convenient, impressive, and completely dependent on a system we do not control. And finally, number 1, this is the one I told you about at the beginning. The thing that was always in her kitchen that you cannot buy at any store. It was not a tool. It was not a gadget. It was not an appliance. It was her. Not just her physical presence, the unhurried certainty that when you walked through that kitchen door, someone was standing by that stove, humming quietly, ready to feed you without asking a single question. Every object in her kitchen told a story about who she was. The rolling pin, the percolator, the recipe box with her handwriting still on the cards. But the thing that made all of those objects matter was simpler than any of them. She was there every single day. And she was not checking her phone. She was not running late. She was not multitasking. She was just there, fully, quietly, completely. There is no recipe for that, and there is no replacement for it either. Which of these items was in your grandmother's kitchen? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one, and I know you have a story. In my next video, I am sharing the things I wish someone had told me before I turned 50. Some of them are going to change how you think about the decade ahead. If you do not want to miss it, subscribe, and I will see you there.